Hey everybody, here's a short tutorial on how to use the Mercury Model 2000 Dynamic Mutual Conductance Tube Tester. If you're an old radio guy or girl, or you're into the high-end audio equipment, you're an audiophile, or guitar amps, then you care a lot about tubes. You may have seen one of these or seen something similar to it. And we're going to do a walkthrough on how to set it up, use it, and test an actual tube. First things first, you need the tube manual. You cannot use this machine without it. You have to have this. Without it, this machine is useless. So if you don't have it, maybe download one somewhere or borrow it, but do what you got to do to get one. You must have it. So we're going to test this 6AQ5 tube today. We look it up in our tube manual. I got it marked already here. And we're going to set up the selector, load, and socket. So they want selector D, load 90, socket 8. I've already done that. Selector D, load 90, socket 8. By the way, this selector, what this really does is set the filament voltage on your tube. So make sure you have that right, because you could burn out your tube. You'll burn it up if the voltage is too high. So if you're testing more than one kind of tube, make sure you have that right before you stick the next tube in, especially if you're like going from a 12 volt tube to a 6 volt tube or something like that. So you know. So we have our stuff set up. These switches here at the bottom are all going to be in the bottom or K position to start. You always start them all in that same spot. So our first test is our shorts. We look here, shorts, where it says glow OK. We have 1 and 7. So for this test, you use switches 1 through 10. We only use the 10 for that. And this shorts light, if it glows on any of the movements except for 1 and 7, then the tube is shorted, and that's that. So let's see. So you move it up to G and back. Now G1 was one of the exceptions, so that's not a fail. And 2, now that little flicker we don't care about, that's fine. We're going to go one at a time from K to G. Okay, 7 is going to glow, and it does. The book said that was acceptable. That's not a fail either. And then 8, 9, and 10. Okay, good. We did not get a glow anywhere we weren't supposed to. So this tube is not shorted. The next test is going to be the conductance test. And your information fed will be here in the GM-EM section. So it says here G1 and 7, P5 and 6. So you're going to set your switches to those positions. So G1 and 7, P, 5, and 6. So it'll look like that. Then you take your function, you move it over to the GM, EM, and you should get a reading. And we're getting a reading of about 4,200 or so. Now, if you look in this book, rated GM micro modes should be 3,700. Okay, and those 2 asterisks next to it mean you use the lower scale. So you have a high scale and a low scale. We're using the low scale. Should be 3,700. We got like 4,200. They do give you a 20% wiggle room in there. So this one is reading kind of on the edge of that. It's on the border. It's actually reading high. So this tube is probably a fail, or at most marginal. So this tube is probably marginal or just on the edge of failing. So next we're going to do the gas test. Oh, by the way, I almost forgot to mention, if your micromole value is not indicated, then you don't do the conductance test, you do the emissions test. That's where you set your switches, where the book says, but instead you go by the center red, yellow, green scale. And you cannot do a micromo measurement on that tube. It's either bad or good for for anything where you're not given the value. Okay, so now we're going to do a gas test. And over here in the gas section, it says G1 and 7. So we're going to put our selectors. We can turn these off. G1 and 7 is selected. We move this to the gas. And if you look on this bottom, very bottom scale here, gas leakage, that green is a tiny little area. It's hard to see on the video, but it is in the green. So this tube is not leaking. So all in all, this tube is borderline. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. It'll probably work, but it's getting close to not, to the end. You guitar guys and the audiophiles, I know you like matched tubes. Maybe some of you ham guys too. But mostly the guitar and audio guys, they love their matched 6L6s, don't you? So what you're going to do is you're going to test your tubes, and you might have to do this for several tubes. And that's why matched tubes cost more when you buy them already matched, is you need to test them, and your micromos should be the same on both tubes. So that would mean a matched tube. It should be the same or super duper close. So that's how you match tubes if if that's important to you. Now the emissions testers are not as accurate. I'll show you one. I have one here today. Here is an emissions tester. It's not as detailed as the conductance tester, the dynamic tester. As you can see, it gives you just a yes or a no. Now this one I've already set up for our tube. I can show you what you get with it. Give it a few seconds to warm up. We look up our data here on the scroll. This will not give you an exact value for conductance. Again, it's just a yes or a no. And it will not test for gas. It will test for shorts. So I think we've warmed up. What do we got? So you can see it's in the good, but it is literally, I don't know if you can see on the video, but it's right on the line. So as we saw on the other tester, this thing is just on borderline. When you want to, you probably get a little more life out of it, but it's getting close. So these two testers agree. The only difference is this one gives you an exact value, and it also tests for gas. So, this is the kind of tester you want. The other one is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't tell you as much. Those ones that, if you're old enough to remember, that were in drugstores and hardware stores, where you could test them yourself, those were the emissions testers. They would not do as much as this. They gave you a yes or no answer. And a few old timers have told me, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard it from more than one of them, that those drugstore tube testers were calibrated to fail a tube at any little imperfection. Because, of course, they want to sell you a new tube. So the emissions test, it's not as detailed and as good. You can't match tubes with it. But for what they are, they're not bad. Those drugstore ones, I see them come up for sale now and then. I wouldn't recommend them. They're big, they're heavy, they don't do that much. And the bit about them being calibrated to fail a tube, I don't know if that's true, but I've heard a bunch of old guys claim that. So there you have it. There's a quickie tutorial on the Mercury Model 2000. Hope this has helped you out today.